Each year we visit our grandmother to spend our summer vacations with. Our grandmother lives in an old but spacious and open bungalow with a courtyard and veranda in the outskirts of the city, close to the countryside. Our grandmother is an old woman with a wrinkled face and saggy skin, but irrespective of that, her soft smile and soothing words are always inviting and comforting. She always goes out of her way to make my brother and I feel like home. Days at our grandmother's house are usually marked by prayers in the morning, siestas in the afternoon, park time during the evening, and finally her captivating tales of gods, goddesses, demons, and ghosts before bedtime, all woven together by her scrumptious meals and retro music on the radio. A few meters behind the house lay an old well. Vines crawled across its crumbling rim. The ground around it was damp, scattered with fallen leaves and patches of moss and algae. The well had been abandoned decades ago as it lay on disputed land, but the rope still hung there, frayed and blackened with age. Our grandmother had strictly warned us never to go near the well, especially at night as it was deep. And once you fell in, nobody on the surface could hear your screams and wails. But the story we got from our park buddies told us otherwise. They told us that the well was haunted by a Dayan, a demonic entity who consumes and drains the blood out of children. While my brother laughed it off, saying that ghost stories like such were common in the countryside. I couldn't shake the chill that crept down my spine. The following night, our grandmother tucked us in bed and narrated us stories about Krishna, the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and the mischievous tales of his childhood. After that, she kissed us goodnight and went to her own room to sleep. But I couldn't sleep. The thought of the well being haunted by a child-eating spirit made my blood run cold and made me too paralyzed to even move. You're such a scaredy cat, can't even sleep because of a dumb countryside law, said my brother, who was playing games on his phone under the covers. I'm not, I said, pulling up the covers till my chin. Oh really? Now he sat up on the bed, facing me directly. If that's the case, why don't you go down to the well, pick up a stone and bring it back here? I bet you can't do it, because you're a coward, a wimp. And always will be, said my brother as he shoved me hard enough to make me fall off the bed. I'm not a coward, I said, fighting the tears threatening to fall down as I used my hands to thrust myself upwards and stand. And I'll do it, I said, almost instantly regretting the words that came out from my mouth. Blinded by the urge to prove my brother wrong, I didn't realize what I had signed up for. Walking to the well in the dead of the night was no joke, especially for someone like me who was too afraid to even go out alone in the dark. But I had to do it. I took a torch from one of the drawers, wore my flip-flops, and slowly crept out of the room, trying not to make much noise. As I reached the courtyard, I could see the well, its dark silhouette rising from the earth like a beast laying in the darkness and waiting for prey. I went towards the gate and held the handle in my hand. At that moment, every ounce of my being screamed and begged me to go back to bed and pretend this never happened, but I was determined to prove my brother wrong. So I pried the handle open and started walking towards the well. The night was unwaveringly quiet. Even the crickets were silent, and the only sound that could be heard was that of my heartbeat thudding in my ears. After walking for a few more minutes, the ground beneath my feet became damp as I finally reached the well. I stood at the edge, peering into the well. The absolute darkness of the well swallowed the weak beam of my torch like it didn't exist. I felt almost relieved. Grandmother was right. The well is just deep. There's no dayon. As I bent down, reaching for a small rock around the edge of the well, the air around me suddenly grew colder. That's when I heard a faint sound. I quickly retreated and turned around, the torch trembling in my hands and my breathing getting heavy. I looked around, but there was no one in the courtyard. The only sound audible was that of my ragged breathing, loud in the silence. That's when I heard it again. I spun around to directly face the well. To my horror, I saw a thin, pale hand with nails as long as claws emerging out of the well. My torch fell to the ground as my heart leaped into my throat. I tried to scream, to run, to hide, but my body failed to cooperate. I was absolutely paralyzed with fear. The pale hand slowly made its way around my arm, sticking its grotesque claws into my skin. I hissed. The pain was excruciating, but enough to bring me back from my state of inertia. My legs finally obeyed my panic, and I ran. I bolted towards the house, my heart screaming and heart hammering. As I finally reached the house, I saw that my arm was covered in blood, and one of my flip-flops was missing, along with the torch. As I reached my room, I saw my brother dozed off. He would never believe my anyway, and I couldn't tell my grandmother either. She had strictly forbidden us from going near the well. Still shaken, I went to the washroom, dressed my wound, and discarded the bloodied t-shirt. As I came out of the bathroom, I saw my grandmother standing in the hallway, her face half lit by the dim yellow bulb. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice calm, almost to calm. I thought I heard something, I said, trying to hide the unease and fear laced in my voice. She suddenly leaned forward and grabbed my arm. I yelped, trying to free myself from her unnaturally strong grip, but she looked me dead in the eye. "You shouldn't go near the well," she whispered. "It's not safe there." I freed myself from her grip and stumbled backwards, still clutching onto my arm. I looked up, only to see her smiling. "Go to sleep. You look tired," she said while making her way back to her own room. I nodded and scurried back to my room. I buried myself under the covers and attempted to get some sleep after the horrors I saw. Morning came too slowly. When I finally gathered the courage to face my grandmother, she was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. The knife moving flawlessly in her hands as she cut the carrots, capsicums, and potatoes. That's when I saw it. Under the long yellow nails, dried blood, not the brown one dried with age. This was red fresh. She looked up at me with the same soft and gentle smile. "What's wrong, child?" she asked, but her smile wasn't the same again. Behind it lied something dark, something sinister. I said nothing. I stood there as the truth made my stomach churn and made hands and feet go numb. The Dayan wasn't in the well. She was in the house.